Yeah, I'm ranting. Let's continue.
The Cambridge police acted stupidly. He said there's a long history in this country of African Americans and Latinos being stopped by law enforcement disproportionately. Every elect.
And that's documented. I saw, Hannity's he's quoting facts, okay, but he's disputing the facts that are documented. And as far as he's concerned, he's another one that wants to erase Obama from existence. Everything's Obama's fault. But let me say this. This country would have been a lot better off if the government would have acted, would have generated, and you can say what you want, but the government does create jobs. They would have generated infrastructure bills to put people to work and created other job bills that put people to work, which in turn has a multiplying effect, running money through the economy, increases in the payment of taxes, and people's lifestyles being increased, because as more jobs are generated, incomes are generated, you have more competition in the private sector versus the public sector for the workforce, etc. But because of the obstruction by the Republicans to Obama and anything he wanted to do, the Republicans have let the country go to hell. If you know your government, you know that all spending originates in the House of Representatives. All spending bills must go through there. Now, the Senate will confirm those spending bills and the president will sign them. But the president on his own cannot spend a dime that is not originated from the House of Representatives. So the president is not at fault for the economic situation of the country. Now, he can make suggestions, okay? He can sign off on budgets, okay? But as far as the actual issues, as far as jobs and things are concerned, all of that must stem from the House of Representatives. And ever since the Republicans took control of the House, we have gone absolutely nowhere.
Year, the narrative of the Democratic Party against Republicans is that they are racist against black Americans,
they are
Hispanic Americans,
they are
gay Americans, that they want dirty air and water, that they want to throw Granny over the cliff.
They do.
Tonight, trying to blame you for the actions of others has ever been critical of the constant, predictable rhetoric, almost the playbook of the Democratic Party. I've asked you in past interviews, how do you deal with this double standard? How do you deal with that predictable playbook of attacks that you would face if you're the nominee?
It's not a double standard. Basically, when you have a progressive and a conservative sitting down and talking about issues, the conservatives will say one thing, the progressive will say another. By the time they get through going back and forth, the progressive always wins. The nature of conservatives is to conserve. It is not to move. It's to go with the status quo. A progressive's nature is to push the envelope. Anyway, that's me sprouting my rhetoric.
Well, there is a double standard, and you know that may be better than almost anybody, but there's an unbelievable double standard. And sometimes I'll speak to young people and the children of young people, and they'll say, could you speak to, I do it for friends. I'll speak to their children, and honestly, it's a lot easier for people in life to be a liberal Democrat, okay? But if you don't believe in it, you can't do it. And you have a double standard like nobody can believe. If this rally, if conservatives and Republicans ever did that to a liberal rally, it would be a national disgrace. It would be all over every paper for weeks. And you can imagine if that ever happened.
That'd be about the same.
It's almost routine. You see this happening all the time. It's like routine, and it's very unfair. I agree with you.
Let me ask this, and it's a question that I've asked you a number of times on the campaign. Since the president has gotten into office, millions and millions more Americans are in poverty, millions more on food stamps, millions more out of the labor force. He will accumulate more debt than every other president combined by the time he leaves office. The economic situation is as bad as you described. How much do you think this has created anger in the country, and maybe they're just lashing out in this particular instance because you're such a high-profile candidate?
Well, it's tremendous. I mean, first of all, there's tremendous division in the country. If you look at African-American youth, young African-American, 59%, 59%, it's inconceivable. It's inconceivable.
Right, 59%. So I'm falling back to where I was. What the hell has President Obama done for black people? That one, he's right, okay? He's done more for Hispanics, more for gays, lesbians, etc., than he's done for black people. But again, even if he did want to do something, and I'm saying if he wanted to, I would assume that he would, his hands are tied by Congress. All spending bills, I will repeat, must stem from the House of Representatives and then confirmed by the Senate, and then the president signs off. He can make known what he likes and what he doesn't like, but he's got to have willing partners in Congress. I remember back in the day, kids used to be able to get summer jobs because the government would shoot money down into the cities for things like police athletic league, summer programs, play streets, etc. And at least 3 or 4 people would be hired on the play street to work. They would get minimum wage, and they gave kids something to do in the summer. All of that stuff is gone. It's absolutely gone. Okay, so again, you could say what you want, but in my opinion, it's Congress that is at fault here for opposing the president, opposing any kind of a jobs bill, imposing any type of social spending.
59% unemployment rate. And you look at even African Americans in their prime, 30, 40, 50, the unemployment rate is very high. And, we have an African American president, and you would have thought that he would have done a much better job for African American citizens of this country. And
he would have if he had an African American House of Representatives and Senate. But unfortunately, he didn't. So he was unable to do anything pretty much for the African American community. My problem with him is it didn't appear that he was even trying to do anything.
He hasn't, and I will bring back jobs from China. I'm going to bring back jobs from Mexico and so many other places that are just ripping this country apart. Our country's being ripped apart. And let me tell you, this is largely an economic issue, too. You know that workers, hard-working people, middle-class people, haven't had a salary increase effectively in 12 years, all right? So for 12 years, they're making less now in many cases than they made 12 years ago.
And why is that? That's because jobs were shipped out overseas, companies were closed, even the banks are outsourcing their customer service lines, which drives me crazy, so that there is more competition for fewer jobs, so pay raises and decent wages didn't have to be offered to people, i.e. no raises in the last 10 to 15 years, no increase in the minimum wage, and people basically just giving up and dropping out of the labor market.
It's ridiculous, and there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of anxiety, but there really is a lot of anger from people that are not angry people. And you get everybody together, and you get them in a city like Chicago, and which again is a good city. It's a good city. It's potentially a great city. And a friend of mine who's a very successful guy always found Chicago to be his favorite city. So you get them in a place like Chicago, and a thing like this shouldn't happen. Especially to 25,000 people we had coming to this, John, and we were able to stop many of them from coming. Fortunately, it's the wonderful thing about the internet. But we were able to stop many people from coming, or it would have been really a mess. And then you don't know what would have happened. But we were able to do it early enough, and the early cancellation and the cancellation was just turned out to be a very good move, because now things have just about cleared up, and there's been no damage.
What do you say to all those people that in many ways feel that frustration. You know, when I give out statistics, Mr. Trump, and I say, oh, 95 million Americans out of the labor force, 50 million in poverty, 46 million on food stamps, we've doubled our debt, median income down. I know it sounds like a statistic, but these are real people, real lives, real suffering, unnecessarily. It seems to get worse every year, not better. What do you say to those people that maybe are left behind, maybe struggling, feeling the anger, feeling the angst, feeling hopeless maybe in many ways?
Well, maybe what you should say is the Congress should get up off their ass and do something, work with the president to get things rolling, like maybe an infrastructure bill to bring up our bridges, roads, and highways up to speed. Maybe a bill to handle our electricity grid. Okay, maybe an infrastructure bill that's going to work on the water pipes in the country. Okay, maybe a few things like that. But no, Congress won't seem to be able to find any money or any agreement to do any of those things. So it's easier than to turn around and blame the president for none of the stuff getting done than for where the blame actually belongs, which is, again, with an obstructive Congress. But Hannity, you know, he's creative. He'll find a way.
That might be, I don't know, drawn into these groups that seem to have agendas. In this case, it was obviously a political agenda.
Sean, you know what I say? I say vote for Trump. Vote for Trump.
Vote for anybody but Trump.
We're going to make this country much better. We're going to do tremendous things, and one of the things we're going to do is bring back our jobs and bring back our industry, because it's been ripped from this country.
How?
It's just been ripped right out of the country.
How?
50,000 manufacturing plants and businesses out of, just taken like nothing, with all the job losses. You take a look at right now, Pfizer is leaving the United States. Carrier is moving to Mexico. Ford is moving its big plants to Mexico. Nabisco is moving its big plants from Chicago into Mexico, and all the jobs lost. And people are disgusted. They're disgusted with their politicians. They're disgusted with our trade deals. They're disgusted with the fact that our military can't even beat ISIS. Can you imagine telling General George Patton we can't beat ISIS?
Oh, my
God.
God.
Beat ISIS in 2 days.
You know, he's so full of shit. He's talking about Patton like he's some master genius. If he was such a master genius, and I'm not even going to go there, but all I'm going to say is the wars today are different wars. Okay, it's just like the Vietnam War. That it was not a traditional war. It was basically a guerrilla. It was a standard army fighting a guerrilla war. A standard army is not going to win. It's just like the American Revolution. We were the guerrillas at that point, and the British were the standard army, and that's why we're able to win. A guerrilla warfare always beats standard warfare given the right conditions. And the conditions over in the Middle East are basically favoring the people that are basically fighting a guerrilla war. So there's no way you can take 100,000, 200,000 troops, and you're not going to win that war in quote unquote 2 days, a week, a month. You might be able to do it in a year, maybe 2. Okay, but then what do you do after you've destroyed everything? According to Trump, yeah, you just you pull out and you basically come home. But now he's at odds with the other guys that say you have to leave a force over there in order to make sure that everything's okay. Just like Germany and France and every other country that we have forces. If we brought all our forces home, we would save so much money. But again, I need to stop.
I mean, can you imagine these people, General MacArthur, General Pat, they'd be sitting in their grave right now. They wouldn't believe it. But, you know, we can't beat ISIS. We can't do anything. We can't take care of our vets. We can't have good health care. Obamacare is a disaster.
Bullshit.
It's got to be repealed and replaced. We can't get education locally. We have this horrible Common Core, which is a disgrace.
Common Core was a system set up by the states. So how is that a disgrace? You guys are always talking about the states. Well, if you abolish the Department of Education and everything, we wrote 100% down to the states are the ones who set up Common Core. So what the hell are you talking about?
Where people are making a lot of money from Washington, and they don't care about the people of Ohio. They don't care about the people of any place you want to mention. I mean, they don't care. I mean, you have some probably do, but for the most part, they care about how much money they're making.
Okay, basically, you pretty much got the gist, and this is basically at the 15. I'm sorry, at the 15-minute mark, and basically he just goes back over and over again what you just heard in the first 15 minutes. Donald Trump is a bully. They canceled this because instead of a few protesters that they would have been able to bully and potentially possibly abuse, excuse me, the numbers would have not allowed those protesters to be abused. Would he have been able to speak? More than likely not, because the protesters would have probably disrupted the entire thing and forced him off the stage. So as not to be embarrassed, and because the police suggested that he not show up, even though he's got Secret Service and he would have had probably damn near every cop in Chicago protecting him, he decided not to expose his followers to the media when there was, I'm not even going to say an even number of people that disagreed with his viewpoints.